Oh, hello. And as always happens when people are on iPads,
Yeah,
they slightly disappear.
That was slightly frightening. Yes.
That always happens when you're on an iPad.
I thought you said I was live. I've gone again.
It always happens. iPads,
Well, we're back.
Yeah, iPads are my nemesis, as you
I
know.
like iPads.
I think they're going to try and...
School teachers' thing, I think.
It's trying to kill me. I'm going to have no nerves and no hair left at the end of this because of the iPads. They are really. And
they're convenient, though, aren't they?
Yeah. I know. They're so convenient. And actually, the quality of the camera are quite good as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Colour. So, anyway, welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
Today we have Stephen McGuinness with us, and he is a painter, as you can see. So the first thing we're going to do, normal situation, we're just going to show you Stephen's page in the magazine, so you will know where you can find him and how you can contact him. So there we go. There we go. So, I know, look at that, it's all very flashy.
Isn't it?
So, go onto the magazine, and you were page 65. There we are. So, there's Stephen. And we're going to have a good chat about all of the landscapes and the painting and everything in a minute. But if you are really loving what you see and you want to contact Stephen, there's his email and you've got his website. We're going to have a little look at that as well in a moment. And he's on Instagram, which, as we all know, is a very good place for us to hang out.
Every day.
Every day. Every day.
Something new.
Something appears. And then we're just going to have a quick look at your website as well, just so people are familiar with what it looks like. So I'm just hoping I'm going to... Yes. I was going to say, wouldn't it be awkward if suddenly I shared a website and it wasn't yours?
That's definitely me.
It's going to happen one day. It's definitely going to happen one day.
No, that's mine.
So this is the picture of the waterfall. We were just talking about
it. It is, Glencar. Yes.
So this is a very popular painting that you do, and a lot of your work is landscapes. So on here, as people see, you've got the homepage, which we're on now, recent paintings, and we're going to have a good look at those in the flesh in a minute.
We are, some of them.
And then some watercolours.
Yes, there's lots of them.
There's those. We're going to have a chat about those as well. And then about the artist, a little bit about you here, which we're going to talk through. And then, hopefully, on your menu, you've also got contact. Excellent.
It is. It's there.
And people can join your mailing list.
They can.
Can they?
They can.
Yeah. And they can send you a message.
Yes. But if they've got Instagram.
Good. They can get hold of you on Instagram.
What's it called? That's not LinkedIn, is it? So I'm on there as well. But
you're on LinkedIn.
I'm everywhere.
Stephen has got all platforms covered. No stone left unturned. So as is normal with these, we're getting into the routine of it now. I'm going to hand the stage over to Stephen so that you all can see his studio and we can see all the works that he talks about as we go along. You can see them properly, and no one wants to look at me.
Oh.
There we go. So there we are. We've got a really good view of Stephen's studio. So, Stephen, I know that you are a recently retired head of art in St Albans.
I am.
But tell us, where did that all start? What's your kind of like, how old were you when you knew you wanted to be an artist and art was going to be your thing?
Oh, it's a fairly typical story, I guess. It was, that's what I could do. I could do sport and painting, basically. Or so they told me at school, and it's what I was always doing. So it's I took O-level, A-level, and then foundation course in Shrewsbury, because I'm from Telford originally, the Rye Bridge, in fact. And then I did my degree in fine art, drawing and painting at Manchester. Oh. Then I had an interesting 2 years very early on trying to make it as a kind of painter, which was quite hard in the 1980s, to be fair. And we formed a studio called the Massa Art Studio in Manchester. We also started the Castlefield Gallery, or at least I helped start that, which I think is still in existence in Manchester.
Castlefield Gallery in Manchester.
Yeah, because at the time there's nowhere to show for people who just coming out of doing their degree. It was like, and at the time degree courses were about art and they weren't about anything else. They weren't about how do you sell stuff, how do you exhibit stuff. It was very much about just making pictures really. So we said it was like a collective art group, which did a charitable gallery, which has gone from strength to strength, I think. And we had a group.
I have to look into that, because my daughter now lives in Manchester, so I'm gonna now task her with Castlefield Gallery.
Yeah, and we had
We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's still there. Yeah, and we took one of those really, which are now trendy apartments, I think, in Manchester. Those sort of old warehouse, Victorian warehouses. We took the top floor, and we had a kind of nice collective studio, so it was very supportive of each other. So I did that, but I ran out of money. There was a bit where all my paintings were red and black, because that's all I had. Which was interesting. But I'd also done the teaching degree, postgrad. So I went to work at Manchester Grammar School, which is a very good school, part-time teacher of art, and carried on painting. And
you stayed in Manchester for quite a while, did you?
Yes, that was when my sort of about 10 years, I think. I was in Manchester from my degree, and then I was teaching for 10 years there, showing every so often, continuing to paint. I think that's, as a teacher, I always thought it was really important that you were practicing your subject. It made it easier to kind of transmit that to students.
And when you were painting then, as an artist alongside, was it in a similar style to what you're doing now?
I think the colour, well, the ones that are colourful, the colour element was still there. I was very influenced by kind of, there were still life paintings. Still life? Yeah, partly because I was at Medlock Fine Arts Centre, which is, I don't know what it's like now, but it had no windows. So it was like an industrial complex, and you'd have your screens up, you couldn't see anything. So I found that quite tricky, really. So I started up in abstract painting, and then I got into kind of, for those reasons, and then got into still life and colour and Matisse and the Scottish colourists, Peploe, people like that I was very influenced by.
But I think those early days of red and black pushed you into more colour.
Yeah, I guess so. I think I started looking. Manchester wasn't a particularly bright place in the 1980s. Sorry, it's much better now. It's massive. It's really boomed. But at the time, there wasn't much going on culturally, and the 80s weren't a great period at that time anyway. And I was painting actually quite bright paintings, but they looked very Mediterranean. They didn't look like they were part of where I was living, if you know what I mean. They didn't have that kind of feeling to it. I think I was very much finding my way, really. I think that's all artists, aren't they? It's a journey. Yeah. Exactly. I wouldn't say we were particularly taught anything at art college. It was about ideas, but you weren't getting techniques taught to you at all. Nobody was telling you how to do anything technically. It was more kind of conceptual, especially at that time. So where did you learn the techniques then? I think that's part of the teaching process. I think when I started to teach, I was trying to think, actually first, because I could obviously naturally do stuff, but I didn't know how I was doing it. So by trying to teach, and then you're trying to think, well, how do you do that? So you take steps back and you break it down. So you start thinking about colour, and you think about scale, and you start to think about where do you get ideas from, and what interests you, and how do you find that. So I think it's from teaching, it's fed definitely into what I'm doing. So you were doing quite Mediterranean colours back then. Was that then you actually went to Spain, didn't you? Yes, because Manchester Grammar School was a brilliant school, and a great art department, and a great place, and I went there very early. So I could see myself spending all my time there. And I went in, I was called young Mr. Mac. And I had this nightmare of going out as old Mr. Mac. What's that film? I can't remember now. When he goes into the school, and the film takes you through his history of one school, and that scared me. So my wife now and I decided we went on holiday to Mallorca. I thought, this is nice. We came back, and then in September, and then I was working there in the February. Wow! So did you apply for a job there? I did. I applied for a job, which is. I'm not going to go into that actually because it's quite weird. It was a great success, but when I got there, it wasn't.
Oh,
It was slightly financially dodgy at the time.
okay.
But it
We'll
worked
brush
out.
over that then.
It worked out amazingly well, actually. I loved it. And again, that it's kind of fed through. I've still got some paintings left over from that period.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I had a one-man show in near Palmer, and it was based on. I'd never painted figures since I did A-level. I thought, oh, finding my way here, let's try figure painting. And I think I came after I saw the folk dance festival in Palma, which was absolutely amazing. And it was from all around the world: Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Bulgaria. Even the English were there.
Even the English, we don't do dancing really.
Well, I didn't quite. Sorry to offend anybody, but I didn't quite get into that one. But some of the other dancing was just so vigorous and so energetic and so kind of joyful. So I did an exhibition based on a fair number of the country's dances, and then we had the exhibition and we had kind of dancing around it and all that kind of stuff. And that was a nice event.
Were you still teaching out there?
Yeah, but it was kind of what I liked about teaching in Spain was the days seemed to get longer because of the weather. Because even December, I think it got dark about 5:30 or something for a little while. But the days were just so long. So once you finished work, very different to being a teacher, what I've been doing recently, was you seem to have another half the day left to go to your studio. And we used to have 10-week summer holidays. so
nice.
Yeah, and I had a beautiful, I had two of my best studios that I've ever had, actually. I mean, one was absolutely stunning, where you could, from the studio, you could see the sea, you could see boats, you could see a fantastic convent on the hill, you could see, orchards and all sorts of, and sheep and goats, all just from this one view. You could just look around it because it was like a sort of a porch thing. It was absolutely stunning, and you could paint out there in the summer.
Quite a nice change from being in Manchester and having no windows and having to paint still life.
Absolutely amazing, and you got struck by what they call the Mallorcan blue, that intense blue sky, which fed into some of the paintings. I think there might be one on the website actually, which is like one of the goats. I think it's Las Cabras, which is quite abstract. I got into those. I think I'd walked in a place called Belver Castle, and I was struck by walking through the forest, and then you're looking up, and where I expected to see the sky, I saw another band of what is obviously the sea, a different blue, and then the boat, and then this big expansive sky. So I was interested in that kind of layering going on, and playing about with boats in the sky. Is it the sky, or is that the sea? And that really strong colour.
You had some examples of the work you were doing there, didn't you?
I think we've got.
Watch out now, because Stephen might knock the iPad over.
This is where it all goes wrong. I don't know if you can see that.
Perfect.
I've kept this one basically because it was my studio in Hennever. Just outside, it was fantastic. Just outside of Parliament, it was one of these old fincas. Yeah. So I'd be, so you can see the sort of railings there and the sort of seat, and this is my studio. But I'd be painting out on the sort of veranda terrace, and this is actually an old drawing board from the school. So it already had these kind of incised lines and kind of textures which are light, and you can see that coming through.
Yeah. Things
like that. So the knots in the wood and kind of scratches, which were there from like 20 years or so, which I think sort of gives you that. Is texture
important to you then? Is that something
it comes and goes, but I do like that idea of how do you show time passing, essentially. Things, weathering things. I don't like things that are perfect.
I love the idea of using things, repurposing.
Yes, I like that. And also just the idea of different surfaces anyway. They make you behave differently because the brush behaves differently, or when you drag a palette knife or a painting knife across a wood panel, it's really, really different than the texture of a canvas and the way it gives I think I find the wood slightly more liberating, to be honest, and really good when you paint outside, because you're not going to. There's quite a few canvases I've got with holes in them. you know, So
you were telling me the story of this sketchbook actually just before we came on here. This nearly wasn't here. This beautiful sketchbook.
Yes,
so
this one.
Stephen does like to do a lot of plein air, don't you? Now
I do.
As a antithesis of having spent all that time inside, I think, in Manchester, you like to be outside. And tell us the story of this sketchbook that nearly wasn't any longer with
well,
you.
I think it's that one. These are mainly from the west coast of Ireland, and this one is slightly damaged. I quite like that format though, which is west coast. So you're on the Wild Atlantic Way, it's called, and that goes down from Donegal. And that's Sligo, but I'm sitting on the edge of the cliff, and it kind of we had 4 seasons in about half an hour, and this wind came from nowhere, and it blew off, just blew away, just took off. It just did that, and flew away, and it just perched further down the cliff, and I scrambled down, and it was that bit where you just think, am I going to get there in time, or is it going to go again? And I was so relieved.
I'm sure.
But it was very dangerous. That I might not have been doing this.
It was the sketchbook or Stephen. Which one are we going to get?
Exactly. So
I love that artists really put their lives in danger for their art.
Well, to be fair,
Please, people at home, don't do that.
No, don't. Health and safety. Yeah, being
health
a teacher.
And safety.
But it is really. I really like painting directly in landscape, but it took me ages to work out how on earth to do it. Because it's uncomfortable, you have to drag stuff along with you, and what do you need, and for me, what size worked. Partly these boards are really convenient because you can pack those away. When they dry, they're easily transportable back to England and stuff. But that, and also this Irishness, because it comes on the website basically. This interesting, the Celtic tradition of thin places. But also, for me, it's to do with that Irish heritage. And my McGuinness kind of gives it away, I've got a feeling.
Yeah.
I'm going to surprise no one to notice there's a kind of Irish, or more Celtic, because I like Scotland as well, and kind of all that kind of thing. Especially, so it's that family connection and that spiritual connection that I get going to Ireland.
Does that provide you with the inspiration?
It does. I feel kind of rooted there. The plan is to maybe end up there, and move over. I hope at some point.
Mr. Mac in Ireland.
yeah, exactly. Old Mr. Mac moved to Ireland.
Mr. Mac in Ireland.
Yeah, exactly. So painting outside is quite important.
You were saying about the process, though. It's taken a while to learn the process, and you've got some more of the small ones behind you. Have they been outside?
A lot of the watercolours will. They do vary, though. Which ones? Some of these, you can see, they're quite direct.
Yes.
Now that is very, very simple. I would have argued, but it's the mist coming over the kind of peak. If you can, I might move that a bit closer because it's very kind of less is more kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's like walking across kind of snow. But just those kind of blues and sort of stuff. And this is on this beautiful handmade paper, Cardi paper, that's what it's called, which was introduced to me by an artist in residence I had at the school I was working at. It's a really nice hand bag, sort of made paper. Really interesting, very absorbent. But
we were talking just before we came on air about the artist support pledge.
Yes.
And that you gave that a little go, didn't you, with some of these?
I did. Yeah, a couple of these went to America actually. Again, there's that Irish connection. It's quite obviously Irish Americans and kind of Scottish also Americans, and same interest I have, I suppose, in my sort of Irish roots that they have. so they do tend to like things like that. But yeah, this sort of size was very good for the artist support pledge, I think.
It's interesting, in your sketchbook I noticed that, because you work in oils and you work in watercolour, and the processes are quite different, aren't they?
They are. They are.
What do they share though?
I
What's the
don't think I use. I don't.
similarities?
I think sometimes I'm using watercolor more traditionally. But I think part of the way I work is, so as a teacher, I don't follow too many rules. To be fair, I kind of know what works, but I do like it's that idea. I like imperfections. I like things to show their handmade quality. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, you've got some down by your feet of some examples of your work. It'd be really interesting for you to show us and talk us through some of the work.
Yeah, which ones should we? Well, we could. Yeah, because this weirdly is quite controlled. I'm going to go slightly strange. It's quite a recent
You're going to go
one.
off piece now, aren't
I
you?
am.
You're
I
going to
am.
go completely off piece.
Because this is slightly more controlled. But that's on panel, which I've just started painting on. I do think surfaces is something that when I get stuck, I kind of either, and this is through teaching partly, I either say change the scale, switch the scale, go very large, you work on a different surface idea. But also this colour idea, because you can see this is kind of Ireland, it's a little port in Ireland. But for me, there's quite a lot of graphic mark making going on at the front, which is, I think, coming from the watercolours, which is slightly more controlled, I think.
So do you use the watercolours to inform the paintings?
I do, usually. Sometimes I like to kind of take myself by surprise and just go for it.
Shock yourself.
I get bored really easily.
I can empathise with that.
So a lot of these paintings have been through like a massive kind of upheavals.
There's quite a distinct colour palette as well, isn't there?
There wasn't these ones, because this is the same quite recent one.
Really vibrant, vibrant. You're not afraid of colour, are you?
No. I think what's
that.
really nice, because we mentioned the fact that I've kind of retired,
yes.
But only since September. What's really nice, I think what was happening when I was very busy head of an art department, was I was painting all the time, but it was kind of in very short periods, if you know what I mean. It's other than holidays. So I think that a lot of the paints were quite eclectic. They kept changing, because I think now I'm able to explore an idea or a body of work slightly more extensively, I think. Well, that's what I'm finding. So there seems to be more continuity between one image and another. So that colour mood thing I would explore much more than I would be if I was going back to the studio. And quite often I go to the studio and I think, well, what was I doing? Because there'd have been a gap, because I'd have been caught up with kind of exams and all that kind of stuff. And it was quite hard to stay rooted to your idea. But what I'm enjoying now is having more time to kind of think about my own work, because also I'd be thinking about students' work all the time. And when I was painting, I'd be thinking about somebody's problem and how they were going to resolve that, or I could help them resolve it. So now it's quite nice to have that attention. And I'm really excited to see what happens in the next 5 years, I guess, with the work, how it goes, how it changes. It won't stay the same.
No.
But this is Salthouse in Norfolk, and if you know Salthouse, I think it's the Duncow pub, which is just there. But while we were there, and this was in the summer holiday that we just had, just after you could go actually back out again, after the virus first struck, was the weather was just phenomenal. We had nice days, but this is sun setting. But at that point, Salthouse floods anyway, really badly sometimes. But the rain just came down like an absolutely sort of biblical flood. And it was just incredible. We had a small sort of apartment, and you could just look out the window, and the road coming downhill was just a river. It was just absolutely, you could have put a boat on it. But then you got this sunlight, and it's just the water and the sort of flood just changes tarmac, because it was the light and the reflections from the sky, which is on this wet road. I've tried to make it quite simple, but giving you little clues as to what's there and sort of ideas of perspective. But I was just fascinated by how kind of light, if you stare at a wall long enough, it's worth doing, because of the way things change, and they can be altered by light and shadows and kind of, so you don't need much to make a painting out of, is what I think. But I was quite interested in this colour, as you can tell, and that's come through quite a lot of the very recent ones, because I do like that kind of quite vivid colour I don't know if you can see too well there, but coming through there. But again, that will have a colour getting rid of the white. There's some bits of white there. They usually have a kind of base colour.
So you do often put a ground down behind.
I do, and I don't use the same one all the time because I kind of think I try and find a way into a painting. And some ways, if I paint it blue, I kind of know what's going to happen. It's how it's going to work. But if I put quite a strong colour on there, and then you put another colour on it can get quite exciting. But I like beginning to create a different mood. Maybe putting a colour down which you wouldn't think was a good idea in relation to the subject you're doing. But anything that just kind of keeps me interested, essentially, I guess.
You alluded to lockdown there. So how have you found lockdown? How's that worked for you?
That was quite odd, really, because it's the idea that I kind of take an early retirement, and the idea that this year would be on plein air painting, get going off and doing all that kind of stuff, painting outside, going back to France and all that kind of stuff, and Mallorca and all those things. I ended up being stuck in the studio, which was quite interesting. But the paintings started to take on. I think people, I don't know if we've forgotten, I think people were really quite scared at the time. And I think that kind of comes through in these sort of paintings that I started to do, which is, if you can see, first there was a watercolour. I started using this boat motif of a kind of alone.
Very isolating. Yeah,
and I got a feeling that he's me, to me, because I wasn't sure if he was. But that's worked through in a number of paintings. One really gigantic painting that I'm still kind of working on. But I think this sort of, they got quite very reflective, very thoughtful, melancholic, quite sad in a way. And I think partially these, which came directly afterwards, when I got to go out again.
Yeah.
So I got to go out to the Norfolk.
Look at the difference if you put them side by side.
The Norfolk coast.
Yeah.
It was like, ooh.
I think I have to be honest, the colours, they're just very otherworldly.
Yeah.
All your work is very otherworldly, which I think when you were talking about your inspiration about the thin places, it totally makes sense to me. But that one, that Boatman, it's the colours and the way you've laid down the colour and the bits that you've left light are just, it's transfixing. You just want to kind of go in a bit closer and see more.
Yeah, that was really, I like that series. And that kind of, and what a boat can sort of, again, I kind of like, I think possibly comes out of teaching, is I find it easier for students to get them into it if they can attach an idea to a painting. So rather than you're just painting a postcard or something, you're trying to, there's some kind of mood, atmosphere, or something that you can attach to make your idea stronger somehow. And it's the idea of the thin places. So if I'm going into the landscape, if they were going into landscape, or I'm going into landscape, I'm interested in finding out about the myths and the legends and the literature and the Glencar waterfall one, which is kind of features in The Stolen Child by Yeats, and it's all kind of reading that and going to the Yeats Festival and walking around and kind of hoping at some of that. My big fear, I think, is because I like walking and I like going to Norfolk and I like going to Ireland and I paint less in Hertfordshire than anywhere, to be honest, outside, is I fear being a tourist, and that's all they are. They're kind of like tourist paintings. So I try to sort of keep that at bay by kind of finding out stuff that will give me a way into the painting, like that kind of spiritual idea of thin places, which is that Celtic tradition of heaven and earth being like 3 feet away, but in the sacred thin places it's kind of reduces still further and you get kind of glimpses of the transcendental, I suppose, which is what you're saying about some of the spiritualness of the colour. I just like that idea, and that's kind of what I feel when I'm kind of sitting on the edge of a cliff watching the light change over the sea, and and kind of, I do like that silent, almost solitary, I think, contemplation of the landscape. There aren't many figures actually in my work, and if there are, they tend to be individuals. And people have said, why don't you put some birds in there or something? But there are some birds now, actually. But
you've been working on some birds, yeah?
Yeah, I have actually. But some people are thinking, and I can be quite reluctant to, because I don't want to make I suppose I use
Like
nice.
you say, you don't want it to be decoration, do you? You want it to be something that
massively big fear if it's not. They're all self-portraits as far as I'm concerned. They're all, if they haven't got some of me in as well as what I'm looking at, then I'm kind of disappointed. You know, if I catch myself kind of just making something purely sweet, or because in my head when I'm painting, there's all stuff going on. It's like the way I do. I read somewhere somebody said something like, having thoughts is like watching clouds constantly changing. And that idea of looking at the sky and kind of seeing the clouds change form, and kind of the way your thoughts change form, which is something that really interests me when I'm sort of sitting in the landscape.
We're privileged as humans to have these, to have an imagination.
Absolutely, and I think I'm trying to kind of, through my imagination, I'm trying to bring to myself more than anybody else that sense of being in a kind of thin space where you kind of, that you lose yourself and you're on your
meditative.
own. Yeah, and you see how big the world is. You can get caught up, especially kind of having to be stuck in your house and kind of lots of people around. I do like getting away, and that idea of the thin places is often, associated with the idea of the wilderness and the kind of mountains. And it's not that long ago that nobody wanted to go to the mountains because it's quite harsh. It's that idea of, like, it was artists who started to go out and sort of climb and say, look at these spectacular mountains. These are, the idea of the sublime. And I'm quite interested in that sense of awe and splendor of waterfalls and skies, but also things like the colour on a tarmac pavement after it's rained really heavily and the sun is setting in marvellous Norfolk sunsets, which are just fabulous.
Yeah.
And the sky just plays out in front of you like the best film you want to see, really. But it's that's that kind of trying to find out about the world through actually engaging with it visually, I think. Something like that.
You were saying that you're excited by the next 5 years. What's your kind of big dream for the next 5 years? Apart from the present situation aside, put that to one side. I know it's tricky.
It is.
Put COVID to one side. What's your dream? What would you like to see happen?
I've always had visions of being old Mr. Mac in a kind of just out in the landscape, just actually painting as honestly and truthfully as I can, really, and not to get caught up in other things, and just actually paint because I need to paint.
Do you have a desire to have an exhibition?
Of course, yeah, I have exhibitions. There's one next September, definitely, and there's other stuff going on.
Next September.
Yeah, it was. We mentioned it earlier, but it would have been. It's in Suffolk. And I cancelled it because I was a bit unsure. It was early September, and it was a bit unclear how it was going to work. So I thought they kindly said we could do it next year.
So is that a solo or is that a group?
It is. It's a week. It's a solo in Framlingham, which I can never say.
We've been struggling with that word.
Yes, I can't say it. I don't know why. But it's Suffolk, and it's to do. Because I go to Norfolk a lot and those sort of landscapes. It's that magpie idea I was talking about earlier.
Yes, so you are going to exhibit those paintings there.
Yes, I am. I think...
show us the magpies, because they're intriguing. They're all based around myth and legend as well, and in that place. They are.
I'll make sure I've said that right.
I have. I've checked it 3 times.
Yeah. What I liked about it, if you've seen... Those people have seen Detectorists, which is on BBC. You can see it on the iPlayer.
We're not. You can also watch programs on ITV and Channel 4.
You can, but it is on the iPlayer. But I've got no reason to like that. But it's about metal detectors. People who do metal detectoring, but they like to be called Detectorists. I've got the actor's name down here because I keep forgetting. And Mackenzie Crook, you might have heard of, and Toby Jones are the main characters in it. And they're and it's that idea that it's a comedy sort of drama thing. It's really, really, I really liked it. but also I like history and I like legend and I like all that thing. And it's about they just trying to look for gold, kind of gold hoards and things and kind of all that. And my son does ancient and medieval history. Hope I got that right. So we all like that kind of thing. But they use the symbol of the magpie, especially in the third series. I don't think magpies go very far from their nest. I don't know if that's true, but it's this idea that they've been looking down over centuries, and they've kind of seen the sort of people. They have a collective memory of seeing that kind of Suffolk landscape change, and they kind of know where the stuff is been buried, and they use this symbol of a magpie a lot. And so I thought, and it's based in Framlingham. So the actual series, the village that they use, I don't think they say it is, but it's where it's from. And I kind of liked to do something about the area, but slightly more off kilter, if you want. So I just like to use the magpie idea. I just like the idea that I like magpies, and they come and visit me in my studio too. So I've got a thing about them. There's the black and white one, which I'm going to carefully get out, which was the first one because that one's ongoing. You might wonder why it's not black and white, but this one is. If you can see that one. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's fabulous. So we're back to the black and red, aren't we?
Yeah.
You've gone all the way back. So that's black and white. It's got the bands at the top and the bottom.
Because that's the idea that I wanted to have, that idea that it is partly filmic. It's about the film. I actually took these magpies, hope we're not breaking copyright, from the series and did some drawings based on it. And then but I'd like the idea that it's kind of, you don't quite know what they're there for. Rather than just making it like we could have ended it there and it'd be quite a nice painting of a magpie. But I thought that changed it. And it also reminded me of book covers and stuff, which I like. Penguin book covers, when you get those bands of colours. And then I almost thought about introducing type and stuff, but I didn't. But
It's really intriguing. It's a device that really draws you in and makes you think, what am I looking at?
Exactly. And I like it to be something that it's not unnerving. It's something that makes you think what's going on. Yeah. It's again and sometimes I'm wondering what's going on, to be fair. But it's just, and I think it comes out of, I can't remember if we talked before or during this bit, but initially when I was at Manchester training, I was doing abstracts before still lives. But I was influenced by abstract painting. My early influences would be like people like Hans Hofmann and kind of Gorky and de Kooning and Pollock. But that was never for me, really. When you're young, I was sort of throwing paint around. But
so this one is a work in progress.
Yeah, which I quite like what's going on here. But again, I kind of want to keep it loose. It's going to be loose. And the whole idea from this actually was because I was printing out the photograph I was using. And when your colour goes wrong on the printer, I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I like the idea again that the magpie is not black and white and it's about something else. And I just like the idea of seeking for things, and like the magpies are seeking for, or the detectorists are seeking for things that have been buried a long time ago, and it's underneath the surface.
I love that collective memory theory.
I do. It's probably not right, but but they've the idea that they've seen all the field boundaries change, and if you go up high, you can see kind of stuff like that. It's a different idea of the landscape. You can see where the fields were, or the mounds were, or the burial things were. And I'm interested in that as well. Some of the Irish sketchbooks that to do with sort of megalithic burial mounds and stuff like that. So I do like that sense of history. And some of the myth and legend, because the painting in there of the burial mound, obviously when people are interpreting what they actually were, you get fairies and stuff in the Irish culture and all that kind of stuff. But it's called the Giant's Grave because, that's what people interpreted as being early on, that it was like the cave of a giant rather than actually being a megalithic tomb, which is what that is.
Oh, yes. So this has got the pink underpainting.
Yeah. So again, it's create a mood before I go out. So in the kind of cottage, I'll be painting these before I go anywhere.
So you paint the ground, and then that's the thing that kind of like pulls it through.
Exactly. And so there's all paintings. There's two paintings I think based on this. One more successful than the other. which I think are on the website, which are influenced by that. But I also like this probably more than the painting that's on the oil, because again, I like the imperfections, the bit that you can still see, the incompleteness.
I love the notes. You see, I'm drawn to the writing. I'm like, what have you written next to it?
My eyesight, I probably can't read it anymore. But in here, I've got like lines from Yeats and kind of from Irish poetry and stuff. Again, it's just trying to, how do you get into, sometimes I think painting is really hard, and I wonder why I'm doing it, and sort of, you're faced with a blank canvas, you're thinking, well, how do I, or even looking at a painting, because when I was teaching, and you go to an art gallery, how do you get students to look? And so again, I think about it. So I used to ask them to try and look at what you think is the first and the last mark that was made on it. And as soon as they've done that, you're pulling them and I'm pulling myself into the painting. So what I'm trying to do is not just to be on the surface. I'm actually stroking the paper here. I'm trying not to be on the surface, but I'm trying to dive down as deep as I can and then come back up and think, what was interesting about that? And then to use that idea in what I'm doing. There's ideas to all of it. So there's kind of, that idea of, because I was interested in lockdown paintings. I think the whole idea of how, I think nature became very important to everybody. And it still is, because we're kind of still locked into this. I think it's really important that the open spaces and how it makes us feel. And I think the paintings I make are because they make me feel. They kind of help me make sense of stuff. So there's a lot of these small ones, which are, this is the walk along towards Sheringham in Norfolk on a light wood panel, so it's easy to carry around. But
you did that plein air, or you did that in your studio?
Yes, that one is, I think a couple of bits went on at the end. But some of it's, again, I wanted to kind of leave it really quite raw. I'd probably end up doing a larger painting in the studio, which I'll probably find it difficult to avoid overworking it somehow. So a lot of those sort of things are most spontaneous. Trying to do this without losing the iPad. But
yeah, try not to lose the iPad.
But I quite like this size because it's quite. So
these are very sketchily quality. And when you were saying that about look at the first mark and the last mark, I'm always intrigued. How does an artist know when it's done?
Well, I don't think it ever is, in a sense. I have this idea, which is probably nonsense, that the best paintings, this is quite a weird one, the best paintings are the ones which look like they've kind of always been like that. They've kind of, the light's coming from somewhere.
The sun's just come out.
Yeah, sorry, that they've always, the colours kind of shuttled around themselves and found their position. They've always kind of been like that. I just like that idea that the painting is kind of, I've had less to do with it. I think it's that kind of not trying to be in control, which probably comes out of abstract expressionism, although these really don't look like it. But it's the idea of kind of materials and what materials can do. And the old thing was truth materials. So the way the paint behaves, and it behaves differently on wood surfaces than it does on canvas, or different tooth to your canvas.
You've gone back to the 80s now. You look like Adam Ash. You've got like a light strip over your
I know. I'm very tempted to go and shut that window, but I think it might all go badly wrong.
No, don't move. We'll just deal with your new what do they call that? New romantics look that you've now strike a pose.
I might be blinded any minute now. I am, so actually.
Kind of organic.
Yeah,
it's like an organic, earthly.
Yeah,
that's got a figure in, which is
unusual. It has. I know. It's one of the kind of latter lockdown paintings, which I think had figures in them. There was this, and I'm never going to be able to remember what the book was called. But when my son was young, we used to read a book. It's not The Book Thief. It's something else. I can't remember. But it's about books, and I'm quite interested in that idea. And it's about stories coming true. So a girl reads a book and kind of gets pulled into this kind of world and stuff. But one of the characters is a fire eater. So if you look closely, it's actually on Stanton in Norfolk. It's based on some studies I did and photographs I took of. It's just great because on Stanton, I don't know if you've been there, but it has the Sunny Honey, I think it's sort of nickname. But it has the most wonderful sunsets. Absolutely gorgeous, absolutely incredible. And
I want to go now. I haven't been, but I
oh,
quite want to go.
well, hold up. No, I'm not going to run Stanton down. But the sunsets are just amazing. And Old Dunstanton is beautiful. But the rest of it's a bit fairgroundy. But the sunsets are worth dying for almost. But there was the idea of just looking back and seeing, you don't see many fire breathers,
No.
whatever you call them.
Fire eaters?
Yeah, whatever. And you just seeing this blowing this flame of whatever it was into the air, which I really liked it. But it's also got that kind of melancholic, I have tendency towards melancholy, I've got a feeling, that kind of melancholic kind of colour thing. I just quite like the idea, and also trying to paint something that's kind of not solid. Obviously I like water a lot, and the spiritual aspects of water. And there's a great book, which I kind of forget what it's called, which is a big influence on me about kind of the natural world and all that kind of thing. If you go into Instagram, you'll probably see me mention it there.
Go on to Stephen's Instagram, because you have a lot of dialogue on Instagram, and you post up a lot, which I think is great.
Sometimes I just stick a picture up, but sometimes I kind of give more of what I'm thinking. Because I'm always thinking something.
I can still. Well, I think it's been fascinating listening to that. How that all the inspiration. Every single artist that we've chatted to on these has a different way of getting into their art, and a different way of exploring their personal thoughts and their emotions. And it's been fascinating to hear. We've got some questions, Stephen.
I might have some answers.
Did you have a positive response? Did you have a positive response to your work early on? So did people respond to it positively?
Other artists tend to. Other painters did. For a long while, it was this idea of painterliness. That was the quality that I seemed to have. Which other painters. I think the school I was at, Medlock Fine Arts Centre in Manchester, was very. Because everything was quite conceptual at the time, but there was a head of painting there who was very into painting, so it was a real painting school. I sold a couple of things, but it's been a long process, and finding my feet as a kind of artist. I think we talked about it earlier, that they didn't actually teach you techniques or anything at art college at the time. It was very conceptual, and often I'd sit in a lecture thinking, I don't know what they've said at all, really. But I've liked some of the slides they've had. It was almost like, and I got quite intimidated by it, because they'd be showing Matisse and they'd be showing Velasquez, and you're thinking, geez, I can't do that. And I got quite into my shell in a way. And I think going back to teach for a while and trying to work out what it was I was doing, and how can you communicate that idea to a student? How do you break it down? Helped me. It's a long process, but I'm more interested in the work. I think where I got the confidence from was the idea that I found out there'll be at least one person liked something you've done. So even if you think that's not very good, somebody will come along and go, oh, that's great. And I just thought, oh, fair enough. I tried to be. I think I used to paint the same painting like over and over again, because I wanted it to be the perfect painting. And I think I had to have that release thing. It doesn't have to be. In fact, I like the fact it isn't.
Yes, because you were saying, you like the imperfections more than you like the perfection.
I want it to be handmade, I want it to have that, like the handmade pot, that you can see I quite like sort of ancient pottery and stuff. You can see the thumbprint of someone from centuries and centuries ago. So I think the value of the handmade, especially now, when I'm sitting with my laptop and I've got an iPad over there, I think, I want to touch the screen kind of. It's a bit tactile, surfaces. This one, which is La Flotte in Hilda Ray. The surface of that, which is kind of thickly, oily.
Yeah, and substance. You were saying to me sometimes you put in ash and you put gold on.
Yes, this is the volcanic ash one, which is kind of
volcanic ash one.
Really try to do this carefully. Which is one of the Glencoe ones, so it's a kind of
stunning.
So it's that series there, but it's got that kind of. I'm going to move it slightly closer. I don't know if this works really, but in there it's got that sort of granular I wanted to make it like kind of
If
granite.
you turn it on its side, we might be able to see. So flat, and then just show the edge of it. You might be able to see.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, I'm not too sure.
No, I don't think you can. Oh, yeah, you
No,
can a bit. Yeah,
yeah, but it's there, and it's got just, and there's some gold in there. I don't know why. I kind of just wanted to show.
You went all glitzy on us.
Did I? I wanted to show time passing. It's essentially what I'm doing, really, because as you get older, you become more caught up in the idea of time passing. Because now, when I say I'm interested in what I do in the next 5 years, that means I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'll be quite old. And so now it seems more important to make stuff, to make more paintings to prove that I'm here, I guess, which is a bit like rock art in that sort of ancient sort of megalithic sort of rock stuff in Ireland, where if you look at these graves, but you could also got rocks where you got that kind of man making an early mark, or a desire to make a mark, a desire to say I was here. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that kind of connection with the past is something that really interests me.
Yeah. What part of Ireland is your favourite place to go?
It's the West Coast. I mean, family from Derry and grandparents from Donegal. My wife's family are from Monaghan. So we do Monaghan, Sligo. I love Yeats and I like that kind of stuff. So I spend a lot of time along that coast down to essentially Donegal, Sligo. But I've been all around Ireland. We've cycled around it. I do like it there.
You're very well travelled, Mr. Mac.
I'm not. I just go to the same place a lot, I think.
Yesterday, Gigi was saying to us about how supportive she found Monaco for artists and how they supported the Monegasque. Did you find that in Spain, that they were very supportive of the artists?
I think because Mallorca was a small island, and as usual, I just got there just after the bottom fell out of the art market. It was absolutely booming just before I got there. And I got there and it was like an economic crisis, and art just died. So, and I was there 5 years, so most of that was at the period where people had made absolute fortunes, artists and painters, and but I missed it.
So if only you were here last year.
I don't know if it was me.
I doubt it.
As soon as I showed my paintings, nobody was interested. No, but it was quite difficult. I think I'd have had to stay there a bit longer. I did have a nice exhibition of the Folk Dance Festival, a one-man show. I think I would have had to spend more time to actually be accepted, I think. It's a very family-orientated island.
So probably not quite as good an experience.
Great for art, though. The galleries were absolutely stunningly amazing, but very contemporary. Also, there's a Mallorcan style, which is more kind of traditional landscape. But they loved people like the Irish painter. I can't remember now. Sean. It escapes me anyway. The big blocked paintings. Really, some great galleries, great collections. Oh, the Miro, of course.
Yeah. Which artist do you admire then? Now, today?
Weirdly, I think people pick up a Turner influence. I think the contemporary artists, in some sort of, who do I like? I kind of quite like Kurt Jackson. I do like David Tress. I really like David Tress. I mean, they're also both really good to teach with, to actually get ideas about sort of painterliness and kind of being expressive, but also having a kind of tangible connection with landscapes. It wasn't just purely abstract. And that idea of sense of place, which is something I would bore everybody with, which is again is connected with that thin places, sacred places, that sort of thing that goes beyond just sort of illustrating something.
Have you been on courses with them then? With the people that you were saying they're interesting to teach with? No, I mean, well, interesting. To use them as influences to teach.
But having said that, one of the joys of being head of art at the girls' school in St Albans was I ran the artist in residence scheme, and people like Jeremy Gardner, who's a fascinating artist, stayed with me and worked with us for a week, and that was brilliant. Absolutely, look at him. If you don't know him, look at it. Jeremy Gardner, fantastic. And
have you been personally on courses then, or is it just you've learnt self-taught and then learnt through?
I've done I was head of art. I was on all kinds of courses, but
Yeah.
a lot of it wasn't to do with art. So I tended to bring people in, because the idea of bringing artists in to work with students. I mean, who else did we have? We had some. Oh God, I can't remember his name. He'll hate me for that. He's just had an exhibition in Norfolk. He was the artist who followed Prince Charles around, and it came to me then. It'll come to me in a minute. But it's fascinating. I learned so much from them, as well as the students. Watching how they worked at their approach to the subject. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of hoping to go. I was supposed to be doing a course myself on plein air painting in Donegal, but unfortunately it got cancelled. But I think it's next year. Which I think it's actually a stone festival. Stone walls, stone carvings. But they also have that. So I'm looking forward to working with some on plein air painting.
Yeah, we have a lot of en plein air painters here in Sussex because of
yes, you will.
The sea and the.
I do like the sea.
Yeah, we have a lot of them. Carl Terry, I think, just won something in America, and a lot of the people who'll be watching, I know that they're out en plein air. Vincent sketches en plein air, and Nick as well paints en plein air. Yeah, I think it's so spontaneous, isn't it?
Yeah, the name came to me. Sorry, can I just say James Hart Dyke?
James
Fantastic.
Dyke.
He's also on Instagram as well, but he's a fantastic painter. He's been sort of artist in residence with MI5 and all kinds of really interesting stuff.
Wow.
And he does stuff called extreme landscape painting, which I'm quite interested in, which is that idea of going to really extreme mountaineering things and suffering to get exactly. Getting off the deck chair and going out there and kind of feeling the cold and the weather.
I asked you before we came on air, have you ever thought about doing Landscape Artist of the Year, didn't I?
Yeah, what I said was I'm terribly influenced by people around me, and I end up copying them. So I'm quite a solitary solitary bee. I like to kind of work stuff out. I look at a lot. I got a fantastic book collection, and I look at a lot of art.
Most of them propping up your tripod right now.
a fair number of them. We got Matisse in Morocco. We got Face to Face, Drawing Matters, which is a very good book. Frank Stella. Yeah, Frank Stella.
Got that one.
Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you so much, Stephen.
No problem.
Been fascinating hearing about your journey and listening to all of the windings through your imagination. It's
a bit worrying, really.
It's incredible, and I have quite a few people who, as you know, have approached me and asked me about your work. So yeah, hopefully we'll be seeing a few sales soon.
That'd be
well.
nice.
So
that'd be nice.
Lovely.
Always welcome.
Don't forget to send me those JPEGs.
Oh yes, you wanted that one, didn't you? Yes, I will do. Thank you.
Later. But thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. And tomorrow, I know she's watching, we've got Carol Berry. So tomorrow,
good luck.
Don't worry, Carol. Look, it was painless, wasn't it, Stephen?
Once it got set up, yes.
Once we got set up, absolutely. So thank you all, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much, Stephen. I'll
Thank
speak to
you.
very soon.
No problem. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.